What's up, YouTube? So today I decided that I'm gonna do a longer drawing video. I had some free time today, so I wanted to just do a video. And for this drawing, I was thinking, how about a spider rose or something simple, just for me to do my first long drawing video. So let's get into it. So I hope everyone's having a good week, It's been a long weekend for me. I just spent a lot of energy out in my garden and basically with the family this weekend. And you know how that goes. So basically, sorry about that. Basically, when I do most of my drawings, I usually just use a Sharpie pen, just because it's cheap to make art with just a pen, you know. It's still cheap if you go get some colored pencils or alcohol markers, but I mean, normally when I first started out really drawing, I was living on my own, and you know, at the time I only really had money for food and pens, and it, you know, it took me a while to find like a pen that I actually love. And you know, I used a lot of pens, tried a lot of different pens. It used to be like one of my hobbies was to swear go find new pen to use, but then eventually I came across these Sharpies, and I really like the 1.0s. If you decide to copy what I buy, it's the 1.0 S-Gel Sharpies. And if you want to get started with your own artwork, pens normally do better on like smoother paper. So just so you know, you want to get like an ink paper, which I'll show you right here. See, it's pen paper. This also does go with the alcohol markers too, and that's kind of like a selling point too on that. It's more expensive. One of these books are around $20 in American USD, you know. So, I mean, I usually run through a book or two a month. And, you know, after I do, like, my fat outline, then I start going in and I start bolding stuff. Add a little depth to it, you know, and basically I try and cover all my bases. And as you can see, we're about to do some whip action. So all the legs are getting colored. Just go with the flow, you know. And up. Something like that. And, you know, that's kind of just like a nice little drawing. I really like adding the extras, you know. I don't consider myself the best artist, but I mean, part of art's just using your imagination and creating what your mind perceives as art. And a lot of people get lost when they first start making art, and they're like, oh, I'll never be as good as that person, or I'll never be a Picasso or Van Gogh or any of these, but you know what, those people, you gotta remember, they practice, they practice, they practice, they practice, they practice, and that's how they became. And honestly, some of their art's like, I know I'm talking about art back in the day, they didn't have the same paints and stuff, so I mean, but to this day I could draw and mimic pretty much all art that I see. At this point, I can kind of look at something and draw it in my own style, and that's how you really want to be as an artist. Just take your time and draw your own stuff. Don't, you can look at other people's art, just make it your own. Try not to do their art exactly to it, and add your own flares. Everybody has their own twists. I see a lot of people make art, and you know why a lot of people make art? Because it's cheap, stimulates your mind, and basically takes you out of your thought process for a little, and you're focused on what's in front of you. I kind of always just doodled. In high school, I basically was bored. I went from a Catholic school to a public school, and the Catholic school I was learning at was far more advanced than the public school that I ended up going to, just because of the way my family was working. My brother had learning disabilities. He wasn't special needs or anything special. He was just had learning disabilities. He had hearing loss and just had his own learning disabilities. It's just harder for him to learn stuff. But basically, at that point, I was in a Catholic school, and my littlest brother was going to an alternative school because he just kept getting in trouble with his friends. And basically, he ended up going to alternative school, and at the time, my mom didn't want to have me in Catholic school. My one brother in alternative school and my other brother in public school, because the Catholic schools didn't have the help my one brother needed. And so basically, at one point, we were all in different schools, and my mom's like, all right, you're going to public school. And I always kind of been a little gifted. Just I was never just a one-trick pony. I just always was learning and reading, and I get a sense of enjoyment from learning new things, and teaching myself whatever I want, So basically, when I got to public school, they're teaching me math that I learned 2 years prior. Earlier. I'm sitting there, I'm all bored. I really started drawing in high school. It's around 6th grade, and 7th grade when I transferred out of Catholic school. and went into public school, and you know, they weren't learning the same stuff the Catholic school was teaching us. So I mean, the tests I could take with just using my brain for process of elimination, you know, they give you an A, B, C test. It's kind of hard to mess them up when you can just, you know, use process of elimination to get the answers that you want. But I mean, I already knew it all, so it kind of just like came easy for me, you know. Other kids in the public schools were actually having, I don't know if they were having trouble or they just didn't care. But, you know, I kind of got in a weird spot. I was in a new school. I wanted to get accepted. So I started hanging out with, you know, not the class clowns, but the people who wanted to have fun, you know. Because I always wanted, like, one of my things in life is always to try and, you know, have a good time. Not like doing drugs or stuff, but it's just like have a good time and just, you know, live life and freaking smile as much as you can, and, you know, not let stuff bother you. I mean, it won't to this day. What I tell people, if you get in a hard situation, just take some time, go for a walk, think about it, write down your options, you know, list your pros and cons. Like, if you're maybe my age and you don't really know what your next move is, you don't really have a career path or the career path you thought you were gonna like, you just kind of got fed up with and bored, realized it wasn't what you wanted to do. You know, right out of high school, I was pretty sure I wanted to be an auto mechanic. And, you know, it wasn't so much the work that really bothered me, it was the people that I had to work with. Because, like, those old school mechanics, they think people know everything. Well, guess what? I didn't go to college for it. I didn't go to high school. I didn't go to tech school. I taught myself, literally, from YouTube and talking to people and, you know, just working with people, spending my own money to fix parts on my own car, you know. And cars are getting more and more complicated to where, like, the average Joe Smo ain't gonna be able to work on their car because they're gonna need $2,000 to $3,000 in tools to do stupid work on their car. Or they're gonna need a computer to do this, and, you know, it's getting pretty intense out there. And definitely, if I was to do it all again and figure out a career path for myself, I think I would continue doing some sort of construction work, because that's what I'm just naturally good at. I like construction work. But as of right now, I kind of just float around looking for work, and when it comes, I work. You know, I more or less would like to say that I'm a full-time YouTuber right now, but I don't even really get paid from YouTube, so can't say that. But, you know, I still do it because I like making videos. Like, it's a passion. I always liked shooting videos. I always had, like, a passion for filming stuff. Even when I was a little kid, I used to be the one that would always videotape the stupid behavior. And I would just always be in the background videotaping because everybody wanted to remember. You know, and I still have my old phones, and there's just videos of all the kids being stupid and having fun. Just being kids. I still have all those videos. You know, today I kind of wanted to become a tattoo artist at some point in my life, but I mean, that market got so saturated and everybody's using AI stuff, and I just really don't want to become one of those people that needs a tablet to make a drawing. I just that was just not my game plan when I started making artwork and when I started to want a tattoo. I've done 20 tattoos personally, most on myself, but some people let me do some tattoos. I've done big ones. And it's the same thing with all those tattoos. They all kind of had what they wanted, and that's how they wanted it. So I was like, you know what? I'm not going to sit here and freaking color people's skin. They all know what they want. That's why I basically just started looking towards YouTube for my art. And, once I started making artwork, that's kind of where everything started getting positive for my life. I started being able to control my, not so much boredom, but loss. I guess you could say I was kind of lost for a little bit, and that's when art really started becoming a hobby of mine. I was down in the city after work. I was kind of alone, so I ride my bike to places and just hang out and draw. People come by and be like, what the heck are you drawing? I'd be like, just making art. And pretty much when I moved back home after living in the city, which was crazy to be honest, I just came back home, and I just kept making artwork. And basically, I got to where I am today, and it's just I try, when I can't think of something to draw, I sit there and I make myself think of something to draw, and I'm like, okay, well, what can I do with a spider? What can I do with a rose? What can I do with this? And what can I do with that? And then, you kind of just making art. But that's it. Thank you for watching. I'm gonna try and start making longer artwork videos more frequently, and I appreciate it. Maybe for a short I'll color this in.